Welcome to the Mediate Your Life podcast. I'm your host, John Kinyon. On the show, I guide guests through challenges and conflicts in their personal and work lives, and in their experience of the larger social political world. The Mediate Your Life approach helps people bridge differences and heal divides using principles and processes based in empathic communication, a mediation framework, and mindfulness. Each conversation is a forum for learning and healing, not only for the guests, but also for the podcast listeners. In this episode of the Mediate Your Life podcast, I'm joined by Tejumo Ogouma, a fellow conflict resolution professional. Together, we navigate the complex emotions and dynamics of sibling relationships and the pain of disconnection. In the conversation, Tejumo shares his own family conflict, focusing on a strained relationship with his sister following the loss of their parents. Using the Mediate Life approach, we explore Tejumo's experience, demonstrating how empathy and compassion can be applied to our most challenging personal conflicts. This episode showcases how the principles we use in our work can be applied to our own lives, even in the most difficult of circumstances. I hope you find it as insightful as I did. Right, I am here with Tejumo Ogouma, who I'm just delighted to have on the Mediate Your Life podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Tejumo. We know each other through this across the aisle conversations I've been leading for about 4 years now, and you have come to some of those, and I think you continue to, and we've become kind of friends as well as colleagues in the conflict resolution world. Just really happy you agreed to come here and share a bit about what you do in the world, but also something on the more personal side of conflict and resolving conflict, and we're gonna go through that together. So anyways, I'll just give you a moment to kind of introduce yourself to who's listening, just to give a little sense of who you are in the world that you wanna speak to.
Thank you so much for having me, for inviting me into this space. I am Tejumo. I was born in a country called Benin. It's in West Africa. It's a French colony. And my ethnic background is from a group called Yoruba. I'm saying that because the word Tejumo in Yoruba language means persevere. I've made it my mission to embody my name. I didn't tell you this, but I went to boarding school in France. I spent a little bit of time in the US, but from the age of 18 to 23, I lived in Soviet Union, Russia. Soviet Union, yeah. So that's a surprise. And then came to Canada, did my master degree, and I worked for 15 years after my master degree in the field of international development. That led me to, living abroad. So I lived in Afghanistan for a year, and then I lived in Mali for 4 years, always working in international development. And in the last 4 years, I've moved toward conflict resolution, meaning I study NVC. We have a conflict resolution program in Ottawa that I did, and coaching. And at the end of that, there was a pandemic. Um, Everybody was asking themselves question, and I did, and that question led me to change profession and just move into the world of mediation and conflict resolution. Maybe another fact that also helped me is that I've been practicing Buddhism for 22 years. And within that capacity, the aspect of listening to people, paying attention, connecting the mind and body was always part of my practice. So the transition was kind of easy. It was kind of like doing something personal in a Buddhist space and now transferring that to a more professional space. Last thing that I would say is that I come from a large family. When we were young, I thought my family, we were only 5 children. By the time my dad and my mom passed away. I've learned that we were 8 children. So it's eight. I have 8 siblings. So with 2 boys, 6 girls, and I think, and I'm the middle child. That also kind of gave me a position of always being in the middle, balancing this, the genders, the age difference, the tensions. It's always something that I grapple, work with all the time, and even trying to define my own identity within that cluster of people. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I hadn't asked you before, I don't think, kind of how you got into or why, what led you into the conflict resolution work in that way. But yes, just even talking about how in your family, the role you had or kind of where you were in with your siblings, that makes sense. And also, you and I have talked some about meditation and mindfulness, and that's really important to me as well, and how that is part of, as you kind of alluded to or spoke to, the ability to navigate conflict or help others. How essential, really, right, to have that ability to hold a mindful awareness. And so just that intersection of that kind of practice, awareness practice, with working with conflict. And there's a lot there that's very important to me, very meaningful to me, and you have a long history of practice there.
Yeah, and what I find is really helpful about meditation is you can talk about meditation, awareness, mindfulness, but I think another way to put it is meditation is, I guess, over time, what I find out is it helps you to become a friend, an ally with your own mind, your body, your emotions, things that we would normally judge, put away, say that we don't like it, and choose. With meditation, you just become familiar. You enter into the whole and the full space of who you are, with your mind as it is, your own impermanence, right? Because you only live so much years. Your emotions always changing, your thoughts, a lot of them, you have them during the day. It changes all the time. So it kind of allows you to become aware, become familiar with that, the landscape of your own mind, the territory of your emotions. And the more you do that, it's kind of easier to extend the same knowledge and awareness to other people, which is really, I think, helpful for conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. That ability to step back and observe the mind and all that. And do you find too that awareness is key to empathy and to opening the heart, to that it allows us to tap into these dimensions of loving kindness and care, unconditional kind of universal care, that's something I think about a lot in terms of responding to the difficulties of conflict and how challenging that is, and how key both empathy and that holding of the multiple sides of the conflict. And how do you think about that as well? And
I've been lucky because I kind of study Buddhism, but also in the tradition, the Tibetan Vajrayana tradition is also one where you practice, like you learn, you read, and you practice. So one of the things that I've learned and practiced over time is that in Tibetan, the mind and the heart, it's the same thing. It's the same word. There's one word for it. So when they're always thinking of the heart mind. It's the same. So when we're talking about opening the mind, it's another way for them to say opening the heart. So inevitably, when you're talking about empathy, loving kindness, openness, they all are quality of the heart or all quality of the mind. The more we open our mind and our awareness, we touch into those qualities. So you're right on. That's what's happened, and I've experienced that through my practice, and also experienced that in my work. That I'm thinking about my work, I'm thinking about my clients, but why do I get up every day? because human beings are suffering, and I'm touched by that suffering. That's what gets me up. And when I'm touched by that suffering, I open up a little bit. My heart's open because I I understand what it is for me, and I completely understand what it is for them. And that's the reason why I'm like, oh, sure, I know this. Let's see what I can do.
Yeah, beautiful. One more question, maybe, before we get into something more personal for you. And it is a personal question in a way. It's like, as you talked about your life and where you grew up, but then all the traveling and living in lots of different places in the world, lots of different cultures, and the work you do now is very international and the kind of different conflicts you get involved with. So, is there anything about how that has influenced you to be living even in? I think you said, was it when it was the Soviet Union? Yeah, right. Anything about how that's impacted your life in terms of this direction of moving towards the suffering of conflict and wanting to help there?
So I think by the time I was 18, I've lived in West Africa, Benin, France, US, Russia, completely exposed to the whole world, for different system, capitalism, socialism. When I went to Russia, to the USSR, when it's Mikhail Gorbachev, I learned Russian language for a year. I was brainwashed right into the revolution and the beautiful things that the USSR can be. I didn't believe it, but then they brainwash you. But that was fine. So I think at that age, at the age of 18, I just kind of, I think I can say it's almost like the image is like something crack open, that open to the world, me, but open to humanity. Because you just realize in my case that people are all want the same thing. And when I think of the work that you do, you talk about needs, right? Universal needs, right? I see that all across this country that are going through all the ages, right? The strategies that people use to gain control, to gain power, it's all the same thing. So, as much as the U.S. or the USSR can be sometimes difficult countries, I have the best of friends, right? I still have friends from Russia because of the way we connected, and we connected through the same thing, music. In USSR was classical music. That's what you got. So I think that that experience, what it did for me, just kind of prepare me to a world where um, I want to see, and I see human being through some direct lens, that what is human about this person? Are they in touch with it? Can I get in touch? Can I connect with it? And from that point of view, can we have a conversation? Sometimes I get lonely. Sometimes I get isolated when I'm not able to make that connection. But I've kind of, from the young age, felt strongly that this was part of human beings, and it's a beautiful place to be and to have a relationship. And that's what I aspire to, at least personally.
Yeah, the universality of our humanness, but all the differences and that sometimes clash. Yeah.
And the universality also of the suffering, right?
Hmm.
And to give you an example, it appears ridiculous now. I was, when between the age of 18 and 23, I was in the USSR. I was cool, hip. You know why? Because I could use US currency. A lot of Russian didn't use that. I have access to cigarette, to jeans. So those were beautiful things that everybody wants. It made me special in front of people, right? And so why am I talking about suffering? The people who didn't have cigarettes, who couldn't travel, who couldn't eat in the same restaurant that I ate at, were suffering. They wanted something that I didn't have, right? Because it was a lot for them. So I'm bringing suffering to say, like, when we have what we don't want, or we don't have what we want, we suffer. There's a lack there for anybody. I get that too, for different things and small things. But back then it was cigarettes. You can have, if you're smoking Marlboro, you're kind of like the king because you're associated with a movie star, right? It's really surreal to tell you now, but that was the reality.
And as you say that, I think too of the Buddhist connection, right, around suffering and what we crave or of what, like all that, like how I'm guessing that there's a thread there for you as well. Yeah.
There is one in the, I know that in the society that we live in, suffering, not a lot of people, we avoid the word suffering. We don't want to suffer, but I think suffering is different from pain. And I've learned the biggest lesson that I've learned in suffering was in Afghanistan 14 years ago when I came back. So when I was there, I was in a um, compound, military zone, very protected. And but during that time, there were a couple of incidents where we lost our colleagues. They were kind of going out. They drove on an IED explosion. People lost their lives and everything. So, and because I was living in a military compound, I also experienced, there were a lot of funerals. People were dying. So when I left Afghanistan, in my mind, I had, for me, I said, okay, I think I was maybe 40 back then. I was like, oh, in my mind, like, I've experienced suffering. I've seen people die. And the biggest suffering is having this trauma, people dying, military, people losing their limbs. That's what I equate suffering with, okay, in Afghanistan. So a year after I come back to Canada and I'm talking to people, and I couldn't relate to anybody. And, my first reaction in my mind was, okay, people are so superficial here. What are they talking about? They're talking about their cars. They're talking about divorces, new job, and everything. And I'm like, okay, I'm in a war zone. I see what it means when people suffer. You guys are not suffering. What are you complaining about? And I couldn't relate to them. But then I had a light bulb moment and I realized suffering is suffering. We cannot compare. If you're losing your if a woman is losing her husband, if she wants a beautiful bag, if she wants a bigger house, as superficial as it is, she's still missing something, and that sense is the same for everybody. So it's not because I lost somebody and somebody lost her cat that my suffering is bigger. I think at the core, I think it's still the same feeling, is still emotion. You miss something. You long for something that you don't have. So I think for me, at least in my experience, when I learned that experience, I'm like, oh, my colleagues are complaining about, taking the bus to work. They're complaining about not getting the promotion, and that's what makes them suffer. And I'm like, okay, so that's cool. That's fine. That's what's interesting them. That's where they are. There's nothing bad with that. I shouldn't dismiss that because it's not as big or as important as it is for me, right? It's all the same.
Yeah, that touches me. Whatever that suffering is for people, it's part of our common humanity, as you said, to suffer. And however we might judge it on the surface, like the depth of that, what that suffering is like inside, is we don't know. And suffering is suffering. And yeah, so that touches me that you say that. Really. So how about should we transition to a situation of yours that we could go on a journey through together, and I could offer one of my mediate your life maps, as I call them, and
Yeah, sure.
see what happens.
Not prepared, but for this, but I'll share what's coming up for me is I just as you know we talk about this. I've just uh, lost my mom and I lost my dad, so I'm officially an orphan. And in that process, my sibling and I are organizing my dead estate succession, how that is organized. In organizing that, it has been really difficult with one of my sisters. She's the eldest. And overall, I think her life has been difficult in the last years. I completely understand that. But what's difficult is, for me, at least in this situation, that we used to get along well, but ever since the passing of my dad and everything, the role that she wants to play to be the eldest, most respected, and everything has been difficult for me, and that led to a lot of tension. And so, being a middle child, being a professional mediator, working in that field and working with that for other people, but when in my own family, I would say it's so dysfunctional that this conflict is there, and I'm one of the parties of the conflict, right? So when it's the irony is any language of mediation, nonviolent communication that I use, I get pushed back and say, we're not in a we're not in a mediation here. We're brothers and sisters. So this has created a lot of tension for me up to and the short story is that I had to distance myself from my sister because it's just too difficult to have any normal conversation discussion.
Yeah, yeah, so common. That's actually an area that I do a fair amount of work in with families and over estates and inheritance. Sometimes that's or part of the conflict, and so yeah, yeah, it's very very common for that to happen. And yeah, so if it's should we work with that a bit? Are you up for that? Then okay. And the yeah, I'll ask you a few more questions just to get a sense of what process might best support for this moment. Is, in terms of the emotions in you or the experience you're having with your sister, does it feel like somewhat of a inner conflict in the sense of how you're seeing her and experiencing maybe anger or frustration or disappointment or those kind of like maybe judgments of things that she's doing, and maybe part of you that doesn't want to judge, and yet part of you that is, and maybe struggling with how to see her with compassion and empathy, and because of what it gets triggered inside of you and all the family stuff. Is that a salient piece of this for you, or is it what's difficult somewhere else?
No, no, it is, and I'm smiling a bit because for this conflict, I think I oscillate between two maps because there's a internal conflict for me around this for the position that I have taken and feel strongly about, but also the relationship, the judgment, the enemy, actor, enemy. So all of us, I mean, all the maps that I discovered so far, I'm using them because they're all like I can see that I'm playing, but all the roles, right? Evaluator, chooser. Yeah. The conflict is very juicy.
Yeah, it sounds like that there's a lot to it. So maybe there's part of is it part of it that you judge yourself in terms of how you're reacting to her sometime? Okay. Yeah, so that's there. Um that would be this what I call, yeah, the kind of this choose self-compassion, having how to have self-compassion when we struggle with that, and then how to have compassion for the other person when we struggle with that. So you have both of those going on. And then is it also maybe choices, decisions to make, what direction to go in, how much to be involved in the process versus pull back and
Absolutely.
not, right? And that you maybe feel like there's different parts of you wanting different things or shoulds. I should do this, I shouldn't do that, right? And I want to do this, I don't want to do that. But there can be that inner conflict about what direction to go in with something like this, yeah?
On that, because I'm, kind of a third in line in the middle, when we got the will, I was one of the executor. I always said, like, oh, I'm a middle child. I don't have to take any particular role. I'll let these people lead. They have a role in it and everything. So I did that for a while and seeing that nothing was moving. Right? If I didn't get up and start doing things, there was no traction. So then I started leading the process how I understood it, but then I'm getting all the criticism from doing that. So I'm like, Okay, if I don't do anything, nothing happens, everybody complains. But if I do something, I get complaints. So what is that about? And people will, and to give you kind of one example, because we live on different continents, we're not all together. We do our meetings on Zoom, and every 2 months we meet same time, and we choose the time because she said that's what works for me, and I says fine. Sunday morning at 7:30, and we do that. It's planned. Yet, my sister comes late at all the meetings, and whatever communication she wants to communicate for that meetings, she will send them. I'm not kidding. 10 p.m. the night before, and comes to the meeting and talks and talk. Oh, I answered you in my email. Didn't you see it? So the first time it was okay. I'm like, oh yeah, she forgot. The second time, I'm just like, this is weird. The third time, it's not okay. I'm angry because I'm like, you're sending me something the night before, but at 7:30 you expect me to read it and you want to change the decision of the course of this meeting. So, you know, I, I've become really aggressive, and I can see I'm also reading some aggressiveness from her part.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. So I hear kind of a combination of some things that trigger maybe frustration in you and some maybe some judgment there, but also this like what to do, how much to lead or not lead, and this like maybe conflicted at times about how much to do that and the kind of reactions that you get for leading or not leading in the meetings. Also wondering about hurt. How much is there hurt involved versus just like a clash of different ways of thinking about things? And often in families, there's this, lots of history, and around something like this, all the history comes up, and sometimes there's hurt from the past. Is that how much of that for you in this context is there?
A lot of it. It's a lot of it. And the way that I can sum up is, if my sister was somebody else, I would definitely not have any communication with her. I would just say, that's enough. But because it's my sister, I can't do that. The things that we share together, we still have our parents' house and everything. But over the years, I think she's done a lot of things that just hurt me. Whether it's words, yeah, when she gets angry, she will attack, and she would make generalizations, really blanket things like, well, I think one email she was asking for help, and I said, no, I'm not going to help you. You brought this on yourself. I'm not going to be involved. The, the response that I got is, you never loved me.
Mm,
Right. It's you never loved me anyway. How how could so I'm just like, well, I do not agree. I don't want to be involved. I'm saying that I don't want to be involved in this, and I don't want any involvement. But then the response is, you don't love me. And I'm saying like, my love has nothing to do with that. But she equates that with my love. Another simple one is, my her birthday came. Um, I was busy. And I wish her happy birthday 2 days after. She said, I don't accept your birthday wish. They're not genuine. They're late. Uh, it's, so I'm just like, who decides to wish happy birthday? So it's really difficult. But these are small incident, but there are multiple of them. I just stopped counting. I just accept that this person is suffering, a lot, much more probably than I do, and but I also decided that I had to be a little bit distant and not take all in because I'm a brother, because otherwise I'm overwhelmed, and I'm overwhelmed by even part of a family story that is not mine or is irrelevant to for me. She carries a lot of it. And interesting enough, maybe you have something to say about this. And I couldn't understand. She would say, well, she could say something like, 10 years ago, you did something that really hurt me. And she would say it, and it would be something that doesn't make any sense for me, but she would remember the date, the time, and tell me. And then it's like 7 years ago you said this. And frankly, I don't remember. And it's not even a bad or a big thing, but I couldn't understand. So so my sadness is to see, at least for now, that there's no possibility for a relationship, and not a relationship that is equal.
Yeah. So it sounds like hurt on both sides, like hurt that she carries and hurt that you carry, and maybe other family members. And yeah, yeah.
And then I think the biggest threat of all this is with the loss of both parents. This is more apparent. So I feel like, okay, now I lost my parents and now I'm losing my sister. So that's kind of, I mean, the story that I'm telling myself. And that's where it becomes really difficult to, to, yeah, I'm like,
The
okay,
pain, where the pain goes deeper. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, maybe let's just decide which territory this kind of spans different territories in the realm of human conflict, as I hear you. So there's the difficulty getting to compassion for her. There's the compassion for yourself, maybe where that's struggle sometimes, or could go deeper into that. There's like what direction to take going forward, given all these dynamics. Those three ways of working, maybe just to keep it a little simple. Which one feels the most relevant in this moment? The compassion for her, compassion for yourself, or this inner kind of clarity about what
I
direction
think
to go in?
compassion for her.
Compassion for her. Okay. This map has three parts, and the first is empathy for you. And I think you've done this work with yourself some, but if yeah, we could do some together right now, and we'll see what happens. Just maybe something helpful will go support you. Yeah, so you've been saying some things about observations of what you've witnessed her doing and saying different things. And in this moment, as you think about that, as you think about those things that have happened that she's done, how do you feel? Like what happens? What's happening in your body right now? Like in your kind of body awareness? What are you noticing?
Truth is, there's a lot of sadness for not being able to meet her in a middle ground and talk reasonably about this. There's that sadness. There's a sadness also where I feel that I've lost my sister. I've kind of like, I feel like the person that is there is different from the person that I knew, and the person that I knew that I connected with is kind of gone, and it's like a different realm in her mind, right? And that I don't understand. So I think I, I'm sad because I lost my sister. Because, and then there's also kind of, as much as kind of having lost my parents, I also fear. Uh, there's a fear that I will lose her too, to something different than our conflict, because I don't know that my sense that she's not well.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, so there's a lot about the sadness of loss, and there's love there, but it's so difficult with all these
Layers.
layers of difficulty between you, and yet the love of being siblings, and maybe what different all that you've experienced being growing up together. So this deep sense of loss with your parents, and loss of connection with her, and the sadness, just a deep sadness in you.
Very, very, very deep, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm always eager for contact, connection, go to people. That's kind of my normal way of being. But in this case, I, I don't do that because it's so difficult, it's so complex, and she can say, "Why are you coming?" If I said, and I go and I say, "Oh, hi, I just thought I'll call you and see how you're doing." She's gonna, "Why are you calling me?" You did not call me 5 months ago. Just like, okay, so what's for me to, what should I do? What should I not do? And so over the years, I just said, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to react, but I'm going to do what's right for me. And I guess you can say protect myself, but just kind of avoid being in this hard situations all the time.
Yeah, like it's so painful that there's this wanting to keep some distance because of how much pain it brings up. And but that's sad too. That's a sadness and in in choosing that, and yet it's so painful when these interactions happen this way. So just a lot of sadness about these different aspects. And maybe where do you how do you feel that in your body? How does the sadness showing?
It's like a weight in my chest. It's actually made the temperature of my blood rise a little bit. Yeah, I'm sure it gives me high blood pressure somehow. When I think about this, it's just kind of this sticky ocean of pain and sadness and yeah, in my chest.
In your chest. But there's a pressure, sounds like there's a sense of pressure and heat and heaviness in the chest, and this weight of sadness and pain. Yeah, and stickiness you said too. Like, yeah. Does it feel okay to bring some of that meditative presence to those sensations in your body, that kind of the part of you that can bring that warm attention to those feelings in you, kind of give it that, just sort of feeling together, you and me kind of feeling together those feelings. Does that feel okay in this moment? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So like a kind of tender being with those sensations and kind of really acknowledging them and listening to them, the feelings. And then another layer to go, if you're up for it, is connecting those sensations, emotions to what you want. And you've mentioned a number of times connection, but I'm wondering any other words or just ways you would put language to the needs that you have, even if it you can't imagine being met with her, but still the longing for the needs that you would love to be met with her, and the pain that's coming from the unmet needs. So what words would you put there in this moment?
So those needs for understanding, for respect, mutuality, cooperation, partnership. I mean, when things were okay, she's a brilliant person. And I'm sure I'm missing that brilliance, right? So, yeah, I wonder where it's gone.
Yeah, so let me just say those back to you. Um, Understanding. Yeah, like to be understood. And maybe to understand her better, I don't know, but it sounds like from what you said, just like really wanting to be understood, and partnership, cooperation, respect, consideration. I don't know if you said that or not, but yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I miss one or two there.
Mutuality.
Mutuality. Yeah, mutuality. Yeah. So as you name those longings, those human, very human needs and longings, and how much you'd like to have those with her, and just how important they are to you, to all of us. How is that? What do you notice in this moment as you connect to those needs?
I had the sense that I'm really longing for them, but they're still a little bit far from me.
Just like kind of she seems far from you in that, yeah. And so there's that sense of kind of distance,
Separateness.
separateness. Yeah. Separateness. And when you focus on those needs separate from her, actually, just how much you value having that with people, like you've said, how much you enjoy connecting with people and all over the world, and how kind of important really human relations are to you, and that these needs come up very strong in this context with her, and yet they're also just um, guessing just important to you in general, how much you value these needs with people being met and meeting, and what you give and what you receive. And so is there anything at that level when you just go into those qualities and what they mean to you, and being in relationship and what those qualities mean to you, is there anything about that and how you kind of how you feel as you connect to those qualities even kind of more deeply?
Yeah, I guess what's coming up for me is how those those needs that you just mentioned, those values. I guess what's coming to me is the question is how how do they become the whole part of who I am, but not just one part, one like professional part or others except my sister? How do they become just the whole picture? That's 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 where I'm stuck because I feel like they're there. I know they're definitely there. Maybe not too far, but there's kind of out of reach right now. And yeah, to know that the potential is there and that I'm aspiring to it, but it's not everywhere. It's confined and yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah. 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 As you focus on these needs, anything, what about how you feel now as you, if you continue to come back to your body, the experience in your chest, and this.
I feel like there's an opening. There's an opening. Almost like, in terms of NVC saying that, okay, what are the different strategies that I can use that I didn't use that I can use now to to meet those needs, right? And leave behind the strategies that I used so far. I'm seeing kind of that new.
Something, some curiosity in you opening for, oh, how those needs maybe could get met, or some what you could do, some kind of something creative is kind of bubbling in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So at this point, we could go a couple different ways. Like the next step is, if if you feel like it, right? If you want to, because one of the things that can open is a not just a should empathize with her, right? As we often do in nonviolent communication, try to empathize with people, but like that something can open, like, oh, I kind of want to, I want to try to understand a little, like what might be going on for her when she's doing these things that are so difficult for you. So just we could check in and see, do you actually feel that open, that desire to kind of, can I, and another thing we could do is a bit of a role play where I'm her and you're you talking to me as her, and I empathize with you instead of what she probably doesn't do that too
Okay.
much, I'm guessing. But so that would be a different experience, but that can kind of take things deeper in this first step of empathy for you. But now empathy for you from your sister as I play her role. So which of those feels like the right?
Let's do the second one. The second one
Yeah.
seems yeah.
Yeah. Cause then we can do the other one after. But if that feels a little intriguing, let's try
Yes.
that even just for a few minutes. So if you, yeah, if you just take a moment and maybe close your eyes and breathe for a second, and just invite yourself to imagine that you're talking to her right now, and that she's here, and that I will take her role and speak for her, and you can imagine you're actually talking to her, but her with the ability to hear you, to empathize with you. So that might seem like a big stretch of the imagination, but still kind of seeing what happens. Yeah. So Tejumo, I'm sister, and brother, what would you like to tell me right now? What do you want me to hear directly from you that maybe I haven't been able to hear before?
I think I'll start with I miss the good moments that we have together when we used to collaborate, work together, communicate well together, and take care of one another.
Hmm. I'm hearing how much you're missing times when we did get along. You're thinking about that, and you want me to kind of hear that means a lot to you. Is that right? That the times we have gotten along and what our relationship has meant to you and still maybe means to you.
Hmm. Yeah, for the longest time, we were both of us were in our family at least were very open-minded. Two of us world-class traveler, and you were working at the UN, so also traveling, so kind of like even close in terms of our professional interests, personal interests, meeting the same people. It was kind of like I had the sense that we're really not only brothers and sisters, but part of the same world and with the same worldview.
Hmm. So there's actually some commonality between us you appreciate, and in some ways, similar life paths or choices. And is it just ways that you appreciate that we have some similarities, some shared ways of being in the world or shared experiences? And that's meaningful to you that we share that.
Yes, it is. And John, there's there's another part of it is also that, having somebody from your family, I guess there's a aspect of companionship in a sense that we share, the same parents, we travel in different places, but we ended up having really same worldview, same way of seeing our profession. So I could have a companion a lot of, a few years older, but who could understand everything that I was doing, right? And we did that for, I don't know, 20 years or so, where it was kind of all parallel. She worked in Australia, I was in Canada, and then she went to Uganda. She came back, so I was exposed to that from her. And then I guess that's what was gone for her. Well, anyway, so I miss that companion familiarity, um, kinship, because it was really beyond being brothers and sisters. It's like we choose those profession and we professionally travel the world for that. So
Yeah. So if I continue to be her, it's like, so brother, I'm hearing you really appreciating the companionship that we used to have around the work that we chose to do, the travel, the shared experiences in a way that you felt like we were really companions in that, and that for those years, that was very kind of meaningful, very important to you that we could share that, and that the loss that then when that stopped, when we didn't kind of connect in that same way, that are you wanting me to know that was really hard for you? That's been a big loss for you.
yes,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm really hearing how much that I didn't really realize that. I kind of knew it, but hearing you say it now, it's like, oh wow, I'm really getting it, that how much that meant to you and how much of a loss that we haven't had that for a while, given that we chose such similar work in the world. that commonality between us that goes beyond just family. How's it for you that for me to hear you like this?
It's good to be acknowledged. It's good for you to recognize it, but it's painful not to let that go, I guess.
Yeah. It's part of you maybe wants to hold on to that feeling with me, and yet it's seems so far and so distant that it's painful and painful, but painful also to let go of. Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing the pain and seeing it. I'm seeing it in your eyes and your body language. Yeah, I guess it means a lot to me to feel how much you care. And I don't let myself take in. Is there any more you want to tell me right now? That's for this moment, or does this feel like what you most wanted me to hear?
I think that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'm John again. And how was that? So to yeah, there are other things, right? There are a lot of things you could say to her and things that have been so difficult for you, but that's what kind of came. That what you just shared. And how was that to kind of say it, imagining like you're saying it to her in a way she could hear it and receive it?
It's liberating for me to say that. Because of all the travels and where I've been and how my life is in multiple chapters and everything, it's often and normal for me to feel like my experience is different and unique. And everybody I meet is not live somewhere for 30 years and 40 years and everything. And my experience is not like that. And I'm realizing how much my sister, I guess, was the kind of the only person close that had the same experience, right, in my family. So I could feel a little bit normal. I'm like, oh, we do this. We both have this, right? But then I'm realizing that over the years, because of that distance, I felt more and more alone in the world, right? And it's like not having, of course, I have people outside who know me, but not having somebody close who can reflect my world view from birth, right? Of course, I have my partner, and I love my partner, and we have a lot of things together. But then with my partner, it starts at a certain age, and the rest is recollection. I'm telling stories, but he doesn't have that worldview and completely separate background, right? So, in a way, with my partner, we're close, but we don't share that experience of where I came from, where we went to school, with different schools that we went to, and the travel that were involved. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just hearing like that your sister literally since you were born, you you've known her and she's known you. You've been with each other and then having this shared on a path in life of career, right? This sense of being so known through like your whole life in a way, right? And how again sounds like the sadness of not having her to connect with around that, like the aloneness, and also losing your parents, and then as you said earlier, just that sense of loss and of how much she has meant to you in a way, certain ways,
mm, mm, yeah.
but it's bound up with so much pain that it's yeah. How about we check in with the second step of empathy for her, like, not agreeing with her, not agreeing with the way she does things, right? Because obviously it doesn't work too well for you. It triggers a lot of this pain, and yet, yeah, she's kind of got her way of thinking and what she believes and how she's feeling and what's happening in her and her needs that she's trying to meet in the best way she knows. So do you feel a genuine desire in you that like yeah, kind of wanting to connect with that? Again, not about agreeing, but just kind of connecting with what might be going on in her when she does these things that are hard for you.
Yeah, you know, I thought about it, and I think in a way. what's going on for her. And I mean, when I think about this, it brings a lot of sadness because I can see how I think genuinely at the core of this is her needs are not met. Her needs are not met, her needs for recognition, for love, care, compassion, empathy, listening, being surrounded by family, being uh, having support of family, cooperation. None of that is met for her. So yeah, she's
She's suffering with that. Yeah.
suffering. Yeah, yeah, I can totally see that none of them that met, and I can not even speculate, but I can see because you know um, she doesn't get along with any of my siblings. They've all decided to part way with her, uh, and they would not do NVC for them. That's it, right? So I can, I'm not stupid. If you've lost all your close sibling relationships, you can say, well, I mean, for me, I the way we were brought up, that would bring a lot of pain for sure. Her needs are not met. Needs for empathy, compassion, being listened to, being paid attention to, feeling important, having some recognition from her siblings, all of these things she wants and she doesn't have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like there's anger often that comes from her, but it sounds like underneath that you're sensing there's just a lot of suffering of all these needs that aren't met for her. Maybe she doesn't know how to meet any better.
Yeah, she's not using the right strategies. She where she dwells, she uses the strategies of shame and blame. Right, you did this to me. You did this, and um, yeah, and I guess we all grow tired of just hearing the same story that we are. It's like it used to be that our parents were responsible. Now we are responsible for
Mm-hmm.
her pain, and
Mm-hmm.
we're just like, come on, like this is too much. So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's that type of thing that's going on for her. I just don't understand why it's so, you know, so painful. It's so deep.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering that too, if you have any sense of why those strategies, the ones that distance her from people and don't really help her meet those needs very well, the shaming, the blaming, the is it like what needs do those strategies meet? Is like some way that she's protecting herself.
No, my sense is she wants love, but she
It's her
wants,
way of trying to get
yeah,
love.
yeah, but she feels that she has to demand it.
Okay.
You have to call me on my birthday. You have to wish me happy birthday. If you don't do that, you don't love me. If you love me, you should call me. I'm like, I don't equate this to, but it's something like that is going on. Um, yeah, I'm a little bit checked out of reality too. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so just somehow that way of doing things seemed to her as the way to try to meet these needs, and yet it doesn't work very well, sounds like.
yeah.
And
It doesn't work very well, and also we by now we all know the strategies that she uses. We all are tired of it. We all want her to use something new, but I don't think that she sees this, and we we feel like, okay, why would we tell her? Because it's just going to exacerbate the whole issue again, right? It's like, oh, I'm doing. You think I'm doing this? Well, now,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, it's I'm sorry to come back to the pain and the suffering and the sadness. It's, I'm not kidding. I got close to 10 emails where we disagree. I thought we disagree on something, but her reaction was, "You don't love me. I always knew that you don't love me."
Hmm.
And I mean, the last time I sat down, I'm like, this has nothing to do with love. But then in this situation, me saying no is that I don't love her. That's really bizarre because I do love her. And I do love her. That I know. And I know it because that belongs to me. I know who I love in my heart. But for somebody to tell me that I don't love him, I'm like, how do you know that? But they say, yeah, because you say no. So it's an interesting dynamic, and yeah, that's where we are. And I'm trying to, as a Buddhist, just hold her with compassion, include her in my prayers, and not and let go of a part of me that is uh, strong or resisting. But that's what I do. But I'm not gonna, if I go to her and say, actually, when I have compassion for you and I do all these practices, she's just gonna she's gonna tell me that she finds me ridiculous. Well, that doesn't work.
That doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah. So again, kind of coming back to the pain in you and the sadness about like so much wanting to be connected with her, but it's so difficult when she says these things or believes these things, and it's just so sad for you to experience those strategies from her, and then the rest of the family experiencing that. And but yeah, it sounds like when she's saying you don't love me, right? That need to be loved, as you said, just like such a strong, deep need to be loved, and believing that even her siblings don't love her, and but like almost like a cry for love in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's gotten worse with my parents passing, I think.
Yeah, right. So it's gotten worse. Yeah. So it's brought up the loss of both of them. Yeah, it's triggered even deeper things around love for her and pain for her and loss for her maybe. Yeah, so how is that for you to maybe hold that sense of you and the empathy for you and your experience with her and how hard that can be and the needs that you would love to be met, and then seeing her experience as she experiences inside of herself and her needs that she's trying to meet, and there's ways that seem to not meet those needs well for her. How is it for you to kind of hold both sides of that in this moment together? Like we're doing this together, and we're right. I'm kind of accompanying you in this process. So how is that so far as you kind of hold both sides of this inside of you?
It gives me a sense of relief and relaxation. Kind of knowing that she's not a whole story of anger and deception, and there's needs from her. She's trying, she's doing her best. Not what I would want, but she's trying. She's maybe coming from a good place. She's crying for love and all these things. So it's good to see that and to include that and to not lock her into the enemy image.
Yeah. And it kind of soften. You feel sort of softened in this moment somewhat. Like it's still difficult, right? But it's there's something about a softer sense of her right now. Is that right?
Yeah, and I imagine if I had taken, if I had no choice but using those strategies, maybe I would come to the same conclusions, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
but what's coming up for me? I think I know I said I'm sad. It's just, I think, kind of the tip of a sadness for me is there's a sadness in realizing that I can't change her. I can give her what she wants. All those needs, I am not responsible for it, and there's nothing. And I kind of want to say, I feel. powerless,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that okay? I don't know, but I know that I can see the needs, but I'm like, this this is not um something that I can do or change or make go away or disappear or anything. That's where I feel the sadness because I feel like I'm turning away. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, right. This powerlessness of you don't see a way to change these dynamics to help her meet these needs better. You just don't see a way to do it, and that kind of leads into the third step of, in this moment, having gone through these first two steps, empathy for you and then for her, and kind of tapping into some of this kind of care and love and for her and for you, for yourself. Are there any possibilities that arise? You said earlier, like that kind of curiosity of something opening, of like, oh, is there anything that you might do differently, or you might ask of yourself or ask of her, or just, yeah, anything that maybe it's just an image, it's not even words, it's some image, but does anything kind of sort of pop into your mind about what to do, what like you said, there's a kind of powerlessness quality too, but yeah, does anything come to you?
Yeah, I think when I'm conversing with her, just be more focused, tender, present, things like this, just to be present as opposed to wanting to defend myself. Because I think when I come into contact with her, I expect the aggression, I expect the reactions, and I maybe anticipate this by protecting myself, right? Because I know it's going to happen, and then I'm going to protect myself. So I'm going to protect myself first before the attack. I think I have there's something like this going on. So in doing this exercise with you, it's maybe just being more open, compassionate, touch and let go,
Hmm. Hmm.
as opposed to wanting to change.
Like it's really accepting her, accepting what is
Yeah.
in a certain way, but with it sounds like this feeling of tenderness for her and compassion for her pain, and both of you pain, and the whole family, that like, and just being in, just that it sounds like it's sort of an image, you're almost imagining yourself when you're talking to her in these interactions around estate or whatever interactions, of just being kind of softer with her, and just more understanding, more accepting, more kind of just trying to care for her as best you can, even though it's difficult. Something like that.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I can feel that, kind of see that in my mind as you say it, and can feel that in your tone of voice, and in your see it in your face. So yeah. And sometimes that, yeah, can change things more than we realize.
Yeah. I definitely. Ever since we started this class, I've talked about that topic a lot, and I think it's been kind of in the back of my mind. And
Yeah, maybe why don't we end here for today. You and I've talked about maybe having that follow up, um, when you in a few weeks, so we can check in about that maybe. But yeah, just so appreciate you willing to do this with me today, and yeah, it's very poignant. Kind of, I feel moved by it. Uh, Going to those places with you, and your willingness to be vulnerable and share this. Anything you want to say, kind of in closing, just how this time together has been for you, and anything, yeah, you want to, last words you want to say.
so, yeah. So first, thank you very much for inviting me and welcoming me into this space and having this wonderful conversation. I appreciate you, and also appreciate your approach in, guiding me uh, through across those different maps and your questions and everything, and I really felt your presence, companionship into this difficult territory. But I also felt really at ease with you, because this right now this would be the kind of the biggest personal conflict that I have in my life, and it's difficult because like I have to live in with this, but then I have to do this work. So it's good to have a different companion in that realm.
It is. It's so meaningful for me to be a companion with you in this very personal side of conflict and family, and how it relates, right? Because of our shared work that we both do out in the world, mediating and helping others. Is there? Yeah, I just realized there is a question I have about linking back to that part of our earlier talking about your background and your work. Yeah, anything about having just together done some of this work on the personal side for you, and any reflections on the conflicts of the world and how you see them in this moment, how you are, you know, being of service in that way in the world, but just yeah, just kind of in this moment, kind of feeling opened up by doing this deep work on a personal level. Is there anything you would just share about the larger world?
Two things is as I'm attending your lessons and workshops with people and working with you, and I also do this. There's an aspect of conflict that I think I'm enjoying. Actually, two. One, the first one is the dance. Like two, conflict can happen, but there's kind of a dance where what I'm thinking, what they're thinking, compassion for them, compassion for me. It kind of like it's a role playing really, and there's a dance aspect of that, so that I like. It's like you're seeing things from a different point of view. But with dance, I see the second aspect where if we're moving to a resolution, uh, you know, the second aspect that I'm also enjoying and I enjoy tonight is the creativity, right? Where the solution is it's somewhere, and we have to work toward it. And what's real now can be different later. And I'm actually seeing the dance and the creativity, both of them, as some kind of gift, because as I move toward them in that space, I guess there's a change in me too.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. Yeah, the dance and the creativity, and something that just gets stronger and stronger in me is yeah, like in conflict, is this energy that can be so creative and so like generative of new things coming out that can be even better. Of course, you and I both know how easily conflict can turn into tremendous violence and suffering and horrible things, but also it can turn into such beautiful things, really, and just in the way you just said it. So, well, again, thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming here to be with me on the podcast and do this work together.
Thank you for your good work.
Well, yours as well. Being a partner on that path of doing that work in the world. So thank you for what you're doing as well. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to today's conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to subscribe to the Mediate Your Life podcast and follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram at John Kinyon. You can also download the Mediate Your Life app to practice these principles in your own life. With love, empathy, and care, I'm John Kinyon. Thank you for listening.